Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for our Navajo Nation Drought Vulnerabilities and Mitigation Effort webinar. Today, our presenter will be Crystal Tulley-Cordova from the Navajo Nation Department of Water Resources. She is a principal hydrologist. And right now I will give the floor to Crystal and she will introduce herself. Thank you so much, Crystal, for joining us.
Thank you, Sharon, for the opportunity to present today. Yate she'e Crystal Tulley-Cordova yanashia twitich eating nishlent katnezahni bashishchin hashkan hedzaha edeshe to heglini edeshenale bestok lijidejgijde nasha Department of Water Resources Banashnish. So I'm Crystal, and I am a principal hydrologist within the Department of Water Resources under the Water Management Branch. Today, I'll be discussing the Navajo Nation drought vulnerabilities as well as mitigation efforts that are being done to be able to address drought conditions in the Navajo Nation. So in the Navajo Nation, we are located in the Four Corners region, the southwestern portion of the United States. This is the latest drought monitor report that is available. And what you can see is that the Navajo Nation still has extreme drought conditions. The area in which we are in, which is located in this Four Corners pocket. I'd also like to denote that this black line that is surrounding Arizona, Nevada, the southern portion of Utah, as well as the southwestern portion of Colorado and a good portion of New Mexico. That L that is there indicates that this area is a long-term impact of drought, signifying that typically greater than 6 months of drought conditions associated with the hydrology and ecology. And then you can see the rest of the United States as well as Alaska, the Aleutian Islands, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Micronesia, and in comparison to the southeastern portion of the United States, there are not that many impacts of drought in those areas that are currently seen by the drought monitor as of August 26, 2021. Next, we want to focus in on the Navajo Nation, and this is also using the drought monitor. And what you can see is a comparison. The Navajo Nation, in a previous presentation that I shared with the NAPS, was the opportunity to be able to know about where our precipitation comes from. So we have a bimodal precipitation regime, which basically means that we get our precipitation 2 times a year. Those 2 times a year are the summer with the monsoonal precipitation and winter precipitation during the winter months. And monsoonal precipitation generally occurs around the 1st of July in our region across the Navajo Nation. So what I put there is the latter part of June, and then the date on the right for that map is August 17th, 2021. And what I wanted to show here is just, how the drought conditions were prior to receiving any monsoonal precipitation and what they look like currently. So what you can see is definitely there's the exceptional drought area has decreased, but we still have extreme drought persisting throughout the Navajo Nation, as well as some smaller pockets of severe drought. And the circular region that is the defiant on both of the maps, the larger yellow orange area is where the Defiance Plateau and the Chiska Mountains are. And so, just being familiar with the Navajo Nation, that those areas higher in elevation tend to see more precipitation, both in the form of monsoonal precip as winter precip. Now proceeding to talk about the drought graph and time series. What you see on the upper right with the pie graph is an explanation. This is looking at August 17th, 2021, what is the percentage of the Navajo Nation that is seeing different classes of drought? And what you can see is that 64% of the Navajo Nation is experiencing extreme drought. 20% of the Navajo Nation has experienced exceptional drought, and 16% severe drought. The bottom figure is a time series, and this is looking at the past, over 20 years of data. And perhaps often people in the audience have heard, we've been in a drought for over 20 years, and this is the proof to show that that is the case. So definitely one of the things that I want to show you is on the most right portion of the figure is 2021, and the date on the bottom is like January 4th, 2021. But what you can see with these maroon colors as well as red colors, the magnitude, meaning how severe the drought has been, has persisted for an extended amount of time. And when you look at the maroon or the reds in the past, the maroons didn't stay as long as they have, as high as they have, for as long as they have, but just with this 2021 drought that we're in. So those are important factors to consider. You've seen in other areas where times have changed, but when you've experienced drought, extreme to exceptional drought over extended period of time, one of the important things for people in the audience to know is that it takes longer for the resources on the earth to recover. And so it's important to think, at the end of July in the Navajo Nation, we got a lot of precipitation, and that precipitation caused flooding. But because we received that large amount of precipitation, that doesn't necessarily mean that gets us out of drought. That's one of the things that I want to make clear. It's kind of like a bank account where, if you're negative $100, for example, in the negative, and you were to think of precipitation events like pennies contributing to that, trying to get that negative or the drought out, that it would take significant number of precipitation events for that to occur. So we have a Navajo Nation drought contingency plan, and in this plan, discuss our drought vulnerability, drought monitoring, drought mitigation, as well as drought response. I will be discussing drought vulnerabilities and being able to describe some of those vulnerabilities, as well as describe some mitigation efforts that are being done by different entities, but mainly focusing on the work that the Navajo Nation Water Management Branch does. Some interesting things to note are hydrological changes that have occurred with climate change. And so within the southwestern region of the United States, some of the important things to know are the declines in the snowpack, more precipitation falling as rain rather than snow, earlier snow melt, as well as both the upper Colorado River and the Rio Grande experiencing below normal stages. And then in the Navajo Nation, our hydrology, what we've seen, and this is through research that has been done, the Navajo Nation Department of Water Resources Water Management Branch, in collaboration with Navajo scholars primarily. We've seen declines in snowpack, declines in more than 30 surface water features, worsening water quality in some locations. Those 30 water features, we can begin to think about what we've seen on the land. For example, some of those natural lakes in the Chusca Mountains are no longer holding water. And it depends, on the time of year that you're there, that water will be there. But then for the majority of the earthen dams, a lot of them don't have that water that has been seen in the past there. This is the Navajo Nation drought notification chart. I don't know if many of you know, but there is a process before a drought is declared in order for that to occur, what has to occur? So the 6-month SPI, our standard precipitation index, is monitored by the Department of Water Resources Water Management Branch. And then an alert occurs when the value of the SPI, or the standard precipitation index, is 0 to negative 0.99. And that's an alert to other entities such as the Bureau of Reclamation, the Farm Service Agency, the Drought Task Force, and then Emergency Management Commission. A warning occurs when the value is -1 to -1.49. That's when the Resource and Development Committee of the Navajo Nation Council is informed, as well as, the Department of Ag, Fish and Wildlife, and other federal programs, as well as the president of the Navajo Nation, and a chapter, grazing districts, farm boards, and water conservation groups. And the emergency occurs when the value is less than -1.15. And that's when a declaration occurs. In the latter part of the summer months, President Nez did sign the reaffirmation of the 2018 drought declaration, reaffirming the drought conditions in the Navajo Nation. So now I'll proceed to talk about the vulnerable to drought. And first, starting off with domestic water haulers and public drinking water systems. They are vulnerable to drought. How they're vulnerable is related to impacts to shallow groundwater levels, as well as quality affecting the efficacy of groundwater pumping equipment. And droughts may impact surface water quantity and quality, and also the effectiveness of surface water supply infrastructure. And there are ways in which I'll further describe how we are assisting with providing more sustainability associated with providing water to domestic water haulers, as well as public drinking water systems. Also impacted are irrigators and dryland farmers. What I have on the left is Navajo Dam lake levels. And what you can see are the years. Blue is indicating this year, 2020 is indicated by green, the lime green color, and the fuchsia color, or purplish pink color, is 2019. Those are the values. The months are on the x-axis, and on the y-axis is the elevation level. So definitely what you can see based on the graph provided here, for the record of the period of record, that 2001, the lake level has been lower than in the 2 years prior. So definitely indicating that water availability. So impacts on water provisions are how irrigators may be impacted. Irrigators and dryland farmers in general that could be impacted by soil erosion. Ranchers, which a large number of the audience members are, probably have seen, with regards to drought, changes in forage. There's a decline in native vegetation that is available. There's also increased erosion and desertification, and little to no water in stock ponds. And, because of that decrease in forage, a lot of people are buying hay and being able to provide that for their animals as supplemental food for them to be able to use. And people are hauling more water as well, because that water is not available at earthen dams like it may have been in the past. In addition to what I've just shared, drought also impacts recreation, wildlife, and forestry. When there's a decrease in increased temperatures as well as decreased precipitation. There's decreased water in reservoirs. And so that may be like at the reservoirs that people go to recreate, including wheat fields, acai. So those are all impacted. And in July, the Navajo Nation Council Resource and Development Committee visited Many Farms Lake, which is a reservoir, and it was dry. And when there's impacts to that, farmers look for other water available. Either they have to fallow or other people may rely on other water sources to be able to continue to grow crops. There are also, with regards to wildlife, decrease in forage and water availability. That can also impact the changes in migration pattern. The Navajo Fish and Wildlife Department a few years back had done an evaluation of mule deer population, and what was seen there was that mule deer populations were migrating more north than they had previously. So that's already, just looking at some of those changes in migration pattern associated with food availability as water availability for the wildlife that is out there. With continued drought conditions, there is an increased risk of wildfires. That's associated with the material in the forests or on the land being very dry. What has been noticed across the southwestern United States as well is the beetle population being able to increase, and therefore, attacking different species of trees, and that also leads to tree morbidity or trees dying, and that's increased fuel for wildfires. So now I'll proceed to go into some drought mitigation efforts that are done by different departments within the Division of Natural Resources. And these are just, these were funded under the Agricultural Infrastructure Fund. And the fund is an opportunity that came about with drought insurance. And this fund is managed by the Department of Agriculture. And what you can see are a variety of departments, everything from forestry to fish and wildlife to water resources to agriculture. The different projects that are being done under this fund to be able to address drought. So for forestry, we have forestry drought mitigation measures under the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and this is all year one projects. Climate change and drought mitigation for wildlife, water conservation and catchments for wildlife, woodland habitat treatments for wildlife, native seed and riparian habitat restoration for wildlife. And that's one really interesting project I had the opportunity to be able to see on Western Navajo, to see the riparian habitat restoration. And it's really amazing to see what can be done when the land has the opportunity to recuperate. And these were sites were at a spring fed area. And it was interesting to be able to see the vegetation that had come back as part of this restoration project. And then within the Department of Water Resources, we have a number of different projects, including the Greasewood Springs Waterline Extension, climate monitoring stations, the Talani Lake Equip Waterline Extension, Copper Mine Livestock Water Line, as well as the Burnside Livestock Well Pump, and then a alluvial groundwater study of the Little Colorado River and Loop. And then there were 333 windmill and wells and 40 earthen dam repairs proposed under this funding. And the Department of Agriculture, there's dryland and irrigated farmland recovery, area-wide fencing, technical capacity building and conservation, agricultural service centers, the Conservation Corps efforts, tribal ranches infrastructure improvements, as well as rancher supplemental feed distribution, horse management, as well as herd reduction incentives and livestock gathering and processing facilities. So I'll concentrate primarily on the Department of Water Resources and namely the Water Management Branch. It's important that I make that clarification because, you know, I realize the audience that I'm speaking to are producers primarily and may have a lot of questions associated with livestock wells and earthen dams. And that is under Nigem Tariq with the Technical Construction and Operations Branch. And I don't have much knowledge about, you know, of those 333 livestock wells and 40 earthen dams, how many of them have been completed and have been repaired. But instead, I'll be talking about what we do within the Water Management Branch with regards to the development of water, primarily for human purposes for use. So in the Navajo Nation, we have unique challenges associated with how water is developed, how it, you know, it's also related to our population. And so within the Navajo Nation, we have sparse population compared to areas that are to the southwest or the east of us or north of us, where they have more populated communities like Flagstaff, Albuquerque, Farmington, or, you know, Blanding, which would be completely far north. So it's really interesting when we begin to develop water across that area, as also with the addition of rural living. In a more populated area, you know, you'd be developing water for a subdivision. But in the Navajo Nation, we have the unique opportunity to develop water. This is, you know, a place that Shanella Assan was from, and her sister lived there as well. And their offspring, you know, my aunts and uncles, and then the children after them. And what you can see is, one, it doesn't look like a cul-de-sac, but two, you know, this is rural living, and this is what we have to be able to do to be able to develop water, taking into consideration the distance between homes, as well as we begin to think about, you know, the wastewater component as well. While also associated with some legacy issues associated with past uranium mining. I don't know how many of you know, but 30 million tons of uranium ore were extracted from Navajo lands between 1944 and 1986. The EPA has mapped 521 abandoned uranium mines within the boundaries of the Navajo Nation. And then it's important to note that in 2005, the Navajo Nation banned uranium mining. Why do I bring that up? It seems like that topic it's a surface challenge, but when you think about how recharge for water occurs, you know, precipitation, recharging either to streams like perennial that run year round or ephemeral that run intermittently when there's rain or snow, it's important to know that, you know, there can be transport issues associated with this, therefore leading to elevated levels of uranium in different water sources. In addition to that water quality challenge, we also have brackish groundwater in the Navajo Nation. And what you see on the southwestern region of the Navajo Nation, indicated in those fuchsia colors, is that we have higher levels of total dissolved solids. Essentially, salinity is high, meaning some water in these areas are saltier than what you'd find in seawater. And so that provides unique challenges associated with technology needed to improve the water quality, either through nanofiltration or reverse osmosis. And it's important to note that the Navajo Nation is unique in having a large number of homes and a large percentage of the population within the Navajo Nation that doesn't have pipe water. And it's important to note because that coupled with COVID-19 pandemic has also impacted the Navajo people. So here are some headlines that you may have seen during the height of the pandemic. Coronavirus cases spike in Navajo Nation where water service is often scarce. Coronavirus hits Indian country hard, exposing infrastructure disparities. And then even within our own Navajo times, pipe dreams, could coronavirus finally bring water to res? And today I'll be discussing a project in which it's a silver lining within the pandemic that has provided an opportunity to provide more access to water in the Navajo Nation. And this is a project in which the Indian Health Service was appropriated CARES Act funding. This wasn't funding that came to the Navajo Nation, but instead, was appropriated directly to the Indian Health Service. And with this opportunity, although I realize our discussion today is primarily focused on drought, but when there's less water availability, it's important to also know where you can get good water, especially when you're a water hauler that is impacted by drought. And it's important for Navajo residents to know where they can gain access to safe water. And there are, a part of this effort, 59 transitional water points were constructed, and there's subsidized water, meaning the water fees are paid for through the Indian Health Service at selected throughout the Navajo Nation permanent water points, as well as transitional water points. Also, a part of this program was the distribution of 37,000 water storage containers. These are 5-gallon jerry cans, and included in this also is 3.5 million doses of water disinfection tablets for an opportunity for people who haul water to store their water safely, with those disinfection tablets being added to the system. And if you're a water hauler, you might have a question, where can I get a 5-gallon jerry can, or where can I haul water for in-home use? One thing should be noted that unfortunately under this appropriated funding for this project, it doesn't include water for livestock or agriculture. But these are the sites where you can gain access to water. The blue are the transitional water points, the red are the permanent water points. And then just for convenience of people who do haul water, either if you're a livestock hauler, that you can gain access, at other water points throughout the Navajo Nation. This is primarily, as I said, for human consumption. The shaded regions are where water storage containers are available. And the ones that are not shaded are where water containers are not currently available because they've been distributed to the residents within those chapter regions. If you're interested in learning more about this effort, please go to NavajoSafeWater.org. Now I'll proceed in talking about the public water system. So I just talked about the drought vulnerabilities to the population of water haulers and offered an opportunity that is available to water haulers by participating in the Navajo Safe Water program. Now I'll proceed to talk about the public water systems. This is a map, and this is to convey the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project, which is indicated in black and white. On the eastern side of the Navajo Nation, there is a lateral that is called the San Juan Lateral that basically follows 491 highway. And then there's the Cutter Lateral, which is on the far eastern side of Navajo. And what you can see in the smaller browns are the Navajo Tribal Utility Authority public water systems. And it's important to note that although I'm focusing on this one project to talk about, there are efforts to be able to develop longer connections between several Navajo communities throughout the Navajo Nation, including the Loop to Delcon project, as well as the Western Navajo project, as well as many others throughout the area. But this project, the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project, is an opportunity for Navajo Nation to be able to use its water rights that were obtained with the San Juan, New Mexico water rights settlement. And it's an opportunity to provide water to communities that may have had challenges in the past associated with productivity or water quality challenges. There are other things in which are important as well to gain more information about water, be it the water on the surface or water below the surface. And I mentioned that we have brackish water challenges, that salty water essentially in the southwestern region of the Navajo Nation. In this upper left-hand picture, the state of the Arizona, you can see that in this depiction, the Navajo region is shaded. And in collaboration with the University of Arizona, we are working collaboratively together to be able to, identify places that these technologies can be used. They're also working in collaboration with Diné College for this off-grid production of safe drinking water. So one of the things to note with nanofiltration, in which they're using for this technology to clean up the salty water, that waste is accumulated, and brine waste is what it's called. And there's an opportunity to use that brine waste for agricultural purposes. So it's like having an off-grid nanofiltration system with a connected hoop house, which provides an opportunity to have water available, but not only that, food available. And projects like this are important, especially when it is including renewable energy, because we do know that many of these communities, there are energy disparities. And so being able to use solar energy is an opportunity to for this system to be successful. In addition to this project, we collaborate with many other partners to gain more knowledge about water beneath the surface and above the surface. And it's important that we gain that understanding, because that provides the Navajo Nation with a more secure water future. And so with the USGS, we've been a part of multiple monitoring programs associated with looking at the Coconino Aquifer as well as Navajo Aquifer over the years. With the Army Corps of Engineers, we're looking at watershed characterization in the communities of Kayenta, Denahoto, and then in Delegate Crotty's district that she largely represents as well on the western side of the Chusca Mountains. We are also working with Navajo scholars like Lonnie Tsinajini, who's from Torreon, New Mexico, and a professor at the University of New Mexico, to be able to look at these images here are the Chusca Mountains, and looking at recharge, how that recharge occurs on the eastern side of the Chusca Mountains. And I just want to conclude by saying akiaha, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal, for your presentation. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and raise your hand or type your question in the chat box or Q&A box. Crystal, while we're waiting for questions, I do have a question for you regarding the information you shared. Are we able to access them via website, or are you able to email them?
Are you referring to the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yeah, I can send it to you.
Okay. Okay, a comment here. Thank you, Crystal, for the presentation. That was some good information. Thank you, Jana. I think that that was a very good presentation, and it's a lot to take in. And thank you again, Crystal, for providing your presentation on Navajo Nation drought and mitigation efforts. I learned a lot. So if we should have any questions, we know where to contact you, and we will contact you for your presentation.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you. And we'd like to invite everybody to next week's webinar on livestock vaccinations. The information there is posted on the screen. If you guys should have any questions, there's our email addresses. My name is Jessie Jim, and I am the field coordinator. And thank you, Sharon Sandman, for setting up this whole presentation. And then also Jana, if you want more information, email us. Also visit our Facebook page, YouTube channel, and look out for our monthly newsletter that will be going out later on today. And again, thank you, Crystal, and thank you to our viewers and also those that have joined us on Facebook Live. With that, everyone have a great day, and we shall see you all next week.
Native American Producer Success Project is a collaborative effort between Dene Inc., the Navajo Cooperative Extension Office, and Dene College Land Grant Office. The project is funded by USDA's Office of Partnership and Public Engagement, Outreach and Assistance for Socially Disadvantaged and Veterans, Farmers, and Ranchers program. Success projects. The goals of the NAPS project is to increase the profitability and long-term sustainability of Navajo farmers and ranchers. To achieve this goal, activities in 4 key areas are being undertaken to improve Navajo farm and ranch operations, to increase Navajo farmer rancher knowledge of and access to available programs and technical assistance provided by the United States Department of Agriculture, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Navajo Nation, the New Mexico Cooperative Extension Service, the Dene College Land Grant Office, and others. To strengthen the organizational capacity of the Navajo Farmer and Rancher Congress, to address the current and future needs of Navajo farmers and ranchers, and to facilitate Navajo farm rancher use of USDA, NRCS, FSA, and RMA programs.